My name is Obert Madondo. I'm an activist, progressive political blogger, and permanent resident of Canada. In the summer of 2003, I washed up on Canada's shores as a political refugee from Zimbabwe. The violence that I had experienced and witnessed in the Southern African country had mutilated me physically and emotionally. But Canada embraced me, nursed me, and healed me. Canada restored that which Zimbabwe had taken away from me, human dignity. Canada believed in me as an equal member of the human race. She encouraged me to unleash my passion in the service of my adopted country. In 2004, I volunteered for the late NDP leader Jack Layton's successful run for parliamentary office. And over the years, I've carved a unique Canadian identity as a globally conscious, activism-oriented, progressive political blogger with a passion for Canadian federal politics, diversity, social justice, and Canadian foreign policy. During my 7 years of loyal service to a charity called Canada-Africa Partnership AIDS, I contributed to Canada's efforts to fight the global HIV/AIDS pandemic. Now I come to you at a critical moment in the history of my adopted country. Canada is under attack, and the Canada of Prime Minister Stephen Harper and his Conservative majority government, we are already living our own exonic moment. All kinds of dirty tricks, including Goebbels-style propaganda, McCarthyism, and Cold War-style red baiting, are part of the political game. Since coming to power in 2006, Harper has made no secret of his ambition to shake up our democratic institutions, traditions, and value systems. Harper's desired Canada is divisive, pro-punishment, poverty-ignoring, anti-minority, anti-multiculturalism, and anti-diversity. On March 13th, the Conservative majorities in the House of Commons and Senate made a giant leap towards this goal. They passed the Safe Streets and Communities Act, formerly crimed C10, into law. The Act will expand state power. It will weaken and undermine the judiciary. It will divide society. It will take away our rights and freedoms. The Safe Streets and Communities Act will punish the weak and marginalized. It will obliterate those Canadian values that we cherish so much: compassion, inclusion, fairness, democratic governance, respect for fundamental rights, and the rule of law, and the accommodation of difference. On Wednesday, March the 14th, I embarked on an indefinite hunger strike to protest the Safe Streets and Communities Act. I will carry out a peaceful action in my apartment here in Ottawa. I will undertake public actions, including regular visits to Parliament, and my 5 demands are as follows. The Parliament of Canada should repeal the Safe Streets and Communities Act in its entirety. Former Ottawa Police Chief and newly appointed Conservative Senator Vernon White should immediately resign. The federal government should make a commitment to invest 100 times the cost of monitoring and dismantling Occupy encampments across Canada. Last 4. To institute a national inquiry into the case of the missing 600 plus missing and murdered Aboriginal women and girls. The House of Commons should immediately institute measures to improve accountability and transparency, and these measures should include limitations on the governing party's power to A. Manipulate standing orders, B. Evade opposition scrutiny, C. Shut down debate, D. Silence critics, E. Run committees behind closed doors, and prevent Canadians from participating and knowing what is going on. The Conservative government must immediately stop its campaign against Canadians and Canadian democracy. This campaign currently manifests through the criminalization of dissent, the promotion of a divisive agenda and attitudes, whipping up of unnecessary moral panic, and using incendiary labels to stifle debate and criticism of its actions. I will continue the hunger strike until all the demands are met. I tasted the wrath of the Canada the Safe Streets and Communities Act proposals. I was part of 8 unarmed, peaceful, Occupy Ottawa protesters resisting the movement's politically motivated eviction from Confederation Park. Just after 2 in the morning, between 150 and 200 Ottawa police officers descended on us. During the eviction, the police applied disproportionate and unnecessary force. I was subjected to cruel and unusual punishment. The police hurt my back, legs, left arm, and I ended up in the hospital. Today, I live with excruciating pain every second of my waking life. I experience recurring headaches that usually wake me up in the middle of the night. And since mid-January, I've been experiencing memory loss or forgetfulness. I have questions that still need to be answered concerning this incident. Why did the 4 police officers who carried me to the makeshift detention center drop me 3 times during the trip? Why was I treated differently than my 2 white colleagues? One was also carried by the police officers but was not hurt. The other was driven to the center in a police cruiser. And then at the center, why did the police officers drop me to the floor and leave me lying on my back, on my stomach, a position that further exacerbated my injured back and arm? Why did they ignore my plea for immediate medical attention? Why did the Ottawa police spend $16,000 during the 4-hour operation when 600 Aboriginal women and girls and the federal government is not willing to do anything? Newly appointed Senator Vernon White was in charge of Ottawa Police that morning, and that's why I'm demanding his resignation. I have nothing personal against the Senator as a fellow human being, but that morning a failure of judgment, a failure of Canadian leadership occurred. I strongly question the Senator's judgment in a situation that demanded the utmost in sobriety. And a quick glance at the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. At the personal level, my hunger strike is an act of personal civil disobedience, peaceful civil disobedience. It is a last stand on behalf of the progressive voices that the Conservatives showed nothing but disdain for during the making of the Act. The Act was created in an environment of tyranny where all Canadians were treated as potential enemies of the state. Dissidents, Aboriginal groups, activists, and civil society organizations opposed to official policy were targeted, demonized, marginalized, dehumanized, and labeled enemies of the state. Just the same thing that happens in a dictatorship. I have a message to Canadians and humanity. This elected dictatorship, this corporatist state, and inverted totalitarianism can only succeed when society is cowed, uncritical, fearful, divided, and susceptible to propaganda. Every day, the Conservatives stop the public's irrational fear of terrorists, radicals, people who look different, criminals, pedophiles, and foreigners. They are trying to force us into a state of permanent fear, a place from where we will clamor for protection from the state. And yet, the moment the state takes away civil liberties in the name of fighting terrorism, the terrorists have won without breaking a sweat. We are all being called upon to defend Canadian democracy at its greatest hour of need. Democracy should never yield to tyranny. Indeed, it never has, never will. One key test of any society is how it treats the marginalized and most vulnerable. Now is the hour to build a society that nurtures hope instead of extinction. It's the hour to remind ourselves that an injustice visited on a single Canadian or community is an injustice visited on all of us. We must insist on a united and caring Canada that without apology encourages all to set aside differences and prescribed labels and come together to create a strong identity based on our values: compassion, respect for fundamental rights and the rule of law, multiculturalism, diversity, fairness, democratic governance, and accommodation of difference. A hunger strike is the most extreme of peaceful acts of civil disobedience. My conscience and lived experience has compelled me to resist our elected dictator, Stephen Harper. It's not going to be easy. Nevertheless, I will fight for a Canada I believe in. A Canada that welcomed me, healed me, and respected me that day I washed up on its shores in 2003. I leave you with the words of Grand Chief Derek Nebenak of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, whose voice, like many others, was ignored during the Crime Bill C10 hearings. Are we going to be a compassionate Canada and look out for one another? Or are we going to criminalize one another and send each other to jail? That is the fundamental question that needs to be answered. We must love and look after each other.